And then as my physical eyes and brain woke up and my psychic senses closed off, then it kind of disappeared. So
yeah, I mean, it's complicated. I mean, that's the reason I'm bringing this up, is that for each of us, you know, it's difficult. I mean, there are a lot of things that, you know, the average child goes through. I have a daughter who's 23, and, you know, I watched her in high school, and young girls go through a lot of things in high school just in general. So when you add this into the mix, it's unusual. That's why I'm really going down this path, because I think that what's being thrown at you is unusual. And normally when you look at unusual patterns, it's because there's something significant about the person going through those patterns, the way you assimilate that and the way you integrate that. That's not always such an easy thing to do, and I want to applaud you, because I look at you, I feel as if you're doing really well with it. But my sense with you always was that you had this thing early, and that's not always the case, and that's kind of why I'm going down this trail with you, because in looking at, and I've talked with Megan about this too. When you look at younger girls, you know, maybe they're 15 or 20 or whatever, and they're trying to understand who they are, and they're trying to deal with just boys and makeup and whatever it is that they're going through, and they have this intuitive thing on top of it. It's not so easy to find people that you can get information from, that get where you're at. And and kind of the theme for me with you and Megan is that you're in that world. I mean, you're beautiful young women, and you're professional, you know, actresses, professional models, and psychic too. I think you have a lot of street cred in that world. And that's why, me personally, I think that you two have been kind of thrown into this so early, is to understand it for the, you know, kind of the ones 10 years younger trailing along behind you.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? I mean, that's kind of, in one sense, a lot of responsibility, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I tried when I was young to just ignore this world and shut it out, and I ended up in a really bad place when I ignored it. In fact, when I started doing all of this, taking classes and sort of focusing on the psychic stuff, I would never set out to be a professional psychic. I did it because I wanted to help myself. So I was in a bad marriage and, you know, physically sick and unemployed. And I actually myself went to a psychic, and she said, well, you know, when you shut out the information that you didn't want to see, you shut out what you needed to know too, which made sense. So I started taking classes and opening back up, and it was a very gradual process for me of, you know, the more tools I learned, the, you know, more comfortable I felt in the world, and it became really clear that this was part of what I was meant to do. And I've known for a long time that I am not meant to just, you know, be a personal psychic, you know, doing one-on-one sessions for that long, because a big part of my sort of soul mission is to teach others, just like you were talking about. Everything that I've learned, and my heart goes out a lot to women. Women, you're one of the rarities, Andrew. There's just not as many very powerful, you know, super psychic men or men that are acknowledging that aspect. So you see that more with women, and also with girls. I do teach children and do readings for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, me being a straight male, especially when I started, when I was, you know, around your age, you know, close to 30 years ago. So when I showed up on the scene, there just wasn't really a way to describe me so much. You know, I had this, you know, I was good looking, you know, I guess, and, you know, I got a lot of attention for that. And people didn't it's interesting looking back, because people believed that I couldn't be psychic, that, you know, that I got clients because women wanted to talk to me and crazy stuff like that. And there just weren't a lot of straight men, and even now, but back in the 80s, it was just like non-existent. There was, and as a result of that, I think it was complicated for me then to be accepted. People didn't want me. They didn't want me in their club, right? And I think in a lot of respects, that gives me a power but it made it more complicated for me. For you, I think there's a similar sort of dynamic, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because what I find is kind of the opposite. Like when people hear what I do, or it's similar to you in some ways, they're just shocked, like, because I just don't look like, quote unquote, what a psychic looks like, you know. I had one guy.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I had a guy, this is when I had my office in West Hollywood, and it's a very gay area, and he walked in, and he's like, oh my gosh, you look like a model. I'm like, well, I am a model too. he just was blown away, because it's just not what people associate with being a psychic.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, one of the ways that there are many ways that I relate to you and Megan, you know, from afar and see you.
Yeah.
But I think that's also a really significant thing is that, like, I did this TV show. I did this infomercial. And the reason I got this infomercial is because I was good at what I did. And I had been introduced to these producers because I had done criminal cases at the time, you know, which I hate doing. I never do them now. But so I'm on TV, right? And the people said, you know, well, it's because Sabrina Kincaid likes you, and it had nothing to do with me. So I kind of got like I was a girl. I mean, you know, I went through all that. It was weird. So so no one believed, like even now. I mean, and it's not because I'm good looking. It's just that you know, now I look like a Russian killer, right? You know, I don't look like what a psychic is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important because stereotyping, you know, I don't wear a turban and you don't wear a turban.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, and we don't, I mean, you know, you're very fashionable and those things there's multiple ways to exist in the psychic universe, but it comes down to integration. And I think the key element here is the way you're integrating all this, you know. And that is why I think you and Megan are kind of being, and I do see you as being sort of given this job, sort of, you know, to shake things up a little bit. I love that. You know, but I think when you are here to shake stuff up, that's not always an easy path to go, you know, to me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you that is part of what needs to happen and part of my sort of soul mission. And I've known for a really long time that whatever, you know, however I appear, it's not really me. I mean, in a way, this is like, well, this is just a costume for the role that I'm playing here. Because I'm designed, basically, in terms of how I look, I think, to look accessible and, you know, for people to want to be able to connect with me. And I can't tell you how often the angels will send me to, like, a bar or a nightclub to talk to someone about angels or ghosts or something and help them. It happens all the time, and a lot of those people then will become my clients.
That's interesting. That's a really interesting dynamic. I want to shift a bit and talk about the work that you do. All psychics have their own style.
Sure.
And I know you do a lot with ghosts, and I want to. And you're doing this thing in England this summer. And if you don't mind, before we get into it, if I wanted to find out more about you, if I wanted to book an appointment or track you down, what's the best way for me to go about doing that?
Yeah, probably finding my website, which is Healing Powers. It's www.healingpowers.net. And if you search Laura Powers and Psychic, that'll usually pull it up too. So I do that. I have a podcast on iTunes that's also listed on my website. Lots of videos. And then you can always look me up on Yelp. I have a good ranking there in Burbank is where I'm located.
Cool. And so before the show, you were telling me that you're doing this event in England. And do you mind sharing that with everybody else?
Sure. Yeah. So this will be the second time that I've hosted this particular tour, and I've worked in various jobs doing tours. So I love traveling. I'm a bit of a gypsy, so I love the opportunity whenever I can. And London is a place where I studied, so I kind of fell in love with it when I was studying theater and art history there. So I decided, why don't I do this tour where people can go and explore this, amazing historic city, but also have insights as to what is there, like what is there spiritually and energetically. So what we do is we go to the Tower of London, we do like ghost walking tours, we go to places where I know that there is activity, and then do the tour, and then we have our own experience where I share whatever it is that I'm getting psychically. We talk about what the group and what they're feeling, and then we're also going to Stonehenge for the summer solstice.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's got to be complicated for you living where you live, because I've nicknamed your little home there Casperville.
Yes.
And the reason I named Los Angeles Casperville is for a very specific reason. To me, there's no more haunted. You can take all the castles in Scotland or whatever. I can't imagine a more haunted place than L.A.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So when you're in Los Angeles and all that energy swirling about you, what is that like for you? Yeah,
it is a very, active place, and it has a certain intensity. There's also just a lot of energy here. One way that I think about LA is it's a very light place, and wherever the light goes, darkness follows. So there's a lot of light and there's a lot of darkness here. So I do find that I have to have more kind of downtime here than I had in Denver, for example. I'm very extrovert and very social, and I still go out a lot compared to most people, but I do go out less often in LA than I did in Denver, for example, when I was there. Just because I need some certain time to like process and release energy. And it's not uncommon for me to go out and be like, oh, there's a ghost, and then I'll help them cross over at the bar or whatever, and then continue with my evening.
So no one's going to let you say that I go out and I find a ghost and help them cross over at the bar and not follow that. So explain. I mean, as a segue, it doesn't get any better than that. So let me set the scene. You're out, beautiful woman. You're out and about in the most haunted place anywhere I've ever been. And a ghost sees you, wants to kind of hang out, realize that he's dead, or she's dead, and you sort of go, hey, dude, you really believe you should be in Van Nuys. I mean, you're not supposed to be here. So what is that? Explain that to people, because I know their heads are spinning. What do you mean by that? Sure. I know what you mean, but let people know what you're talking about.
Okay, sure. Yeah, these kind of things will happen pretty often. I'll give you one example. So I was at the St. Felix bar, which is, there's several, but I was at the West Hollywood location, and was there with a friend. And so I'm an empathic. I'm also clairvoyant. Sometimes I do see a ghost that, would look like a physical person, just, they seem very solid. But sometimes I don't see them. I literally would feel them, or I have to focus to see them, and I'm not doing that unless I'm doing my work. If I'm out, I'm not automatically like focusing on having my third eye be really open like all the time. So I was at this bar and I was feeling really agitated, and I'm an empath. So when I feel something, I have to constantly check in and say, okay, is this mine? Is this my friends, is the bartenders, is this a ghost? If I'm feeling something and I can't clear it, I have to figure out, okay, where's this coming from? So that's what was happening. I was just feeling this intense agitation, and I sort of glanced over away, and when I did that, out of like the corner of my eye, I saw this man who was foaming at the mouth and, kind of sickly green. He was wearing black and white shirt, youngish, dark hair. And I had glanced away before I kind of processed what I was seeing, and then I looked back and realized that it was a ghost that I had seen, because I didn't see him physically standing there when I looked again. So I just took a moment, I psychically tuned in, and I saw him, psychically I saw that he was standing there, and I asked him what he wanted, and he just pointed up, which to me that he wanted to cross over, he wanted to go to heaven or the other side. So somehow, and I don't know how this works, but somehow ghosts can tell that I can do this. And this was one of the reasons why growing up was such a challenge. They were attracted to me even before I had any idea or any tools to help them or protect myself. So in this case, it was rather simple. He basically was asking for help. That's why he felt agitated. He was trying to get my attention, but I was at a bar drinking with a friend. I wasn't really focused on my psychic stuff. So I opened up the light, and which is like a gateway or a portal to the other side. He crossed very quickly because he was waiting to do so. And then I did get the message that he was from the area nearby somehow. So I asked the bar